Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Vasquez, good evening. This week we saw peaceful protests on the Portland State University campus devolve into what the Portland police chief called a criminal event, with some demonstrators breaking into, occupying, and damaging the library. This morning, police, at the request of the university, cleared the building and made multiple arrests, including students and outsiders. Broadly speaking, what will your approach be as DA when it comes to holding people accountable who damage property and trespass? Mr. Vasquez, go first.
Thank you. First and foremost, what we need in this particular situation is a DA that you can trust and one with experience. What we've seen clearly is that back in 2020, Mike Schmidt's policy was an absolute failure. It's still, in fact, if you go on the official website for the Multnomah County DA's office, it's still there. If you Google protest policy, it will come up and tell you all of the things that he refused to prosecute and all of the things that he was going to give conditional dismissal to. These things are really all things that are covered and are happening right now at PSU. And sadly, it goes much further, as we've seen those 15 cars that were hit by arson as well. Now, with my experience, what you get is someone who prosecutes in an even-handed manner, who doesn't, as my opponent does, flip-flop in the last second and now has decided it's okay to prosecute. I'm someone that's prosecuted the Proud Boys, I've prosecuted Antifa, and I think tonight's question is to Mike, are you ready to admit that that was a failure in 2020 and come back to an even-handed approach towards prosecuting this political violence?
Mr. Vasquez, that is time.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all, for hosting this debate. I appreciate being here tonight with you. Look, what I've been doing all week has been working closely with the PSU president, with the chief of police, with other law enforcement officers as we have come together, as you saw, in a unified front to be on the same page and announce what our strategies were. By no means are we declaring victory, as we said today at the press conference, but what you can see is that the library was cleared out. I've been very clear that there's no tolerance for property damage or destruction. That's not okay. Those individuals will be prosecuted. I believe there are 22 arrests to date. This is completely different from 2020 when we were in the middle of a pandemic. My opponent likes to gloss over the context of that moment. When our courthouse was ground to a halt, caseloads were at an all-time high, prosecutorial staff was at an all-time low. We had to make decisions about resources. Today, we have the resources we need, the courts are back open, and we're holding people accountable when they commit property damage.
Thank you. And a follow-up on the topic of 2020, what specific lessons from your experience that year, what are the lessons that you take from that year, and how will they impact your decisions going forward? Mr. Vasquez, can you limit your response to 30 seconds, please?
Certainly. In 2020, I was actually there the night that protesters lit the Justice Center on fire, and I was there for almost really every night. And I found very quickly that, we needed to be an active participant in this process. And what unfortunately happened is that protest policy sent us in a spiral downhill. And what's glossed over by my opponent is that it sent two clear messages. It told people that wanted to do violence that they had a free get out of jail free card. And sadly, it told police officers that they were not valued in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, so my first day in office was August 1st, 2020. That was the 60th day of the protest. So what Mr. Vasquez is describing had already happened underneath my predecessor. When I took over office, we announced that we would focus our resources on those committing property damage and violent crime, and that's what we did. And at my direction, Mr. Vasquez prosecuted those cases. In fact, sometimes it was hard to get him and others to do that, but we had to go in, and I went into his office specifically and demanded that he prosecute Proud Boy Alan Swinney when nothing was happening with that case.
Mr. Vasquez, do you want to respond to that briefly?
I do. That is one of the most ridiculous assertions that my opponent has made. I dedicated weekends, nights, fighting hard for our community. I was the one that was there with police when these things were coming. I was the one that was reviewing search warrants. There was never a moment in time when Mike Schmidt ever appeared in court or ever had to come in any way and tell me what to do. Because my 23 years of experience, to be clear, I know how to prosecute cases. He does not.
All right, Mr. Schmidt, just briefly here.
Well, he didn't actually answer the question at all. He just went back to his talking points about how much experience he has.